I made a phone call. Actually, it was a Skype call. No, it was a FaceTime call to a client in Australia. And she reminded me of a story that I had forgotten. I'd also forgotten that Australians really are fascinated by Mexico. The story is of a young of Mexican heritage mechanic, worked for BMW. He did very, very well. And one of his clients, who had worked in this client's car for 2 years, said, I'm going to sell my car or trade it in. And the mechanic said, I love this car. Is there any way I could buy it? And the fellow said, I'd love to have you have this car. And he said, well, let me check with my boss and see if it's okay if I buy it from him. He came back and said, yes, I can buy it. So he bought the car. He was very proud of it. His grandparents lived in a small pueblo in Mexico. And he thought, I'm going to go show off my new car. So he took off for this pueblo, went down a almost deserted road. It was dusty, had a flat tire. Fortunately, he had a tarp, put the tarp in the dust. The sun is shining down on him, and he's trying to change the tire just as quickly as he can. And he sees an old man with a donkey and a cart coming towards him. He goes, oh, no. He's going to want to talk. He's going to waste my time. I'm hot. I'm starting to sweat. I want to get to my grandparents' house as fast as possible. The old man came up. The young man was very abrupt, almost rude. The old man left, and the young man thought, he's gone. But then he felt better. Something was different. And he turned around, and the old man had put himself between the sun and the mechanic. So the sun was not shining on the young man's back as he changed the tire. So you can take that story and do with it what you like, but it can go down a lot of different paths. One of my favorite stories, I totally forgot it. Want to change subjects. Want to talk about how you pick a trusted business advisor. What questions do you ask? What are you looking for? Well, first of all, I think you need to interview 3 people. I don't think you should just interview one person. You should check their background, assuming you like their background and what you read on their website or what other methodology you have of checking them out. Then you should spend a half hour to an hour interviewing them, and they you. It should be a two-way street. What are you looking for? Nothing replaces experience. And then you might go for some experience, and then you might consider more experience. What kind of experience? I'm thinking they should have worked for somebody else. They should have been with a company where they progressed, they added value, and they got promoted before they started their own business. Then they should have started, I'm going to say businesses, plural versus one. One would be their startup venture. It'd be great if they bootstrapped it versus kitchen table financing or some other kind of financing. So that would be a good way of evaluating them. The second business they should have started is one, hopefully the first one was fairly successful. They can take the income from that and either refine the initial business or morph it into a different business. And the third is, and this is probably the most important, that they failed at the business. Because I don't know about you, but I learned from failure and pain. As a matter of fact, the reason I'm qualified to be a trusted business advisor is that's what I didn't have, and that's why my business failed. So I'm rather invested in helping people not go down the same path. Now, I will add, the failure taught me another lesson. So a failure upon a failure is 2 minus is equal to plus. Getting back to the questions you should ask them. You should ask them what kind of experience they have in coaching. They're going to be doing a lot of coaching. There are a vast number of people who are in coaching who are well-intentioned, but they have not had rigorous training. So you want to make sure they have rigorous training where they've been evaluated and reevaluated and evaluated, and they've grown in the process, because you're looking for somebody that's a step or two ahead of you. So they should be very professional coaches. You're looking for connectedness. Do you connect with them? You're going to be spending a lot of time with them. You're going to be having very serious conversations. Serious is maybe not the right word. Deep, significant. You're going to be having significant conversations with them, which is one of the reasons I really enjoy what I'm doing. Because it's not just those superficial, vapid conversations, they're deeper conversations. So that's a piece of it. Then you're going to want a proposal from them. What does their coaching look like? What's their model? For example, the model I use is assessment, challenge, support. So the assessment process comes from maybe a 360. Sometimes that's overkill. Certainly some interviews of people around you, that's very important. Then maybe some self-assessments. You can do those online. I use a biography. It's about 6 pages. You'll get reacquainted with yourself. There'll be some really tough questions in there. So then I take, and you take, and we collaborate those 3 data points, and you come up with a development plan with what is your goal, preferably 1. What action steps are you going to take? What is your old behavior? What is your new behavior? Is that behavior observable? Because what you want is outsiders to observe you as you're trying to reach your goal. Because if you don't get feedback, you're going to be evaluating yourself. And I hate to tell you this, but it's probably not going to be an unbiased evaluation of you. So you have the development plan. You're marching forward. Now, in this whole process, you should be connecting with whoever is your trusted business advisor. Connecting on the level of the coaching, connecting on the level of their business acumen. Do they understand finance, marketing, sales, all aspects of business? They may not be professionally trained in any of those, but they should have had enough experience that they're discerning. So they know what works and what does not work, and they can help guide you, because that's part of the value add. So they've really got to understand all aspects of business. So it's the business piece as well as the interpersonal piece, and it's been framed this way. The business part is a half of it. The interpersonal or emotional intelligence is the other half, and that's critical. Then it should be an ongoing process. Don't read any book and think you've got it, including my book. That's the start, but you will not have it. It's a process that evolves by being connected with somebody over a period of time. So in my mind, your engagement with a trusted business advisor should be 3 to 6 months. Then it can be extended, and maybe it's a trial period, and that's fine. And you build that in up front, that it is going to be a trial period. Then you'll begin to achieve what it is you want. So I talked about the assessment. I talked now about the challenge, which is your development plan. I talked about the support, which is the ongoing process of coaching. That's going to get you from where you are to where you want to go. You got to enjoy the journey, because it's amazing. You'll be challenged. People ask me, well, how do I know this is working? How do I know I'm changing, other than the feedback I talked about earlier? And that is, are you uncomfortable? Because if you tell me, I'm very comfortable, this is fun, I'm troubled by that. Because if you're out of your comfort zone, you're not going to be having fun a lot of the time. And you're going to be getting tough feedback, hopefully from the people that I've interviewed and coached them to give you the tough feedback. And I can guarantee you're going to get tough feedback from me, because that's one of the things I didn't get from the people I worked with. It was my problem. I didn't know how to ask for it. And that's another aspect of this process. You should learn how to ask for feedback. There's a right way and a wrong way. You should learn how to incorporate it. Because if you ask for feedback and you don't do anything with it, guess what? I'm not going to give you feedback again. And if I give you tough feedback and you really get upset, then you can guarantee I'm not going to give you feedback. So those are just a few pointers to start with. Not everyone needs a trusted business advisor. So how do you know when you need a trusted business advisor? Well, one clue is people are really nice to you, and people tell you exactly what you want to hear. And there's not a smidgen, an iota of truth. They've read you well, but they're not telling you the parts of the business that need to be fixed. You desperately need that. You also need a trusted business advisor if you've had no management or leadership training. For dead sure, you need a trusted advisor if you're having turnover in your business. Then the other one is your business growing? Have there been any breakthroughs? Are you getting to the goals that you want to achieve? Because if you're not, you need a trusted business advisor to help guide you and challenge you appropriately. A trusted business advisor asks really good questions of you, forces you to think about your purpose, your destiny. How are you going to sell the business? What's your exit plan? What kind of return do you want? Then another dead giveaway is if you want anything done, you got to do it yourself. There's nobody you trust, nobody you can delegate to. That is a downward spiral. Guess what? The business owns you. You don't own the business. For me, a really nice business is a quasi-lifestyle business. Now, I know if I were an investor in your business, I may not be thrilled hearing you say it's a lifestyle business. But based on my experience, if you're not having fun, then you're missing part of self-employment and having your own business. It is such a wonderful thing to be able to set your own schedule and enjoy the things you do with the family. It is a struggle at first, and you'll be putting in long hours, but a trusted business advisor will help you deal with the issue of being overwhelmed. That's another major clue that you need a trusted business advisor. Why are you being overwhelmed? Are you taking on too many projects? Are you balancing too many plates? Do you come out of the shower every morning with a great new idea and the team almost doesn't want to see you come into the office? All of those are clues that you need a trusted business advisor. How do you know if you need a trusted business advisor? Here are some clues. You're having lots of turnover. You hire people, but they don't stick. Well, part of the problem, perhaps, is your hiring process. Do you have a hiring process? Often we hire people for their skill set, and we fire them for who they turn out to be. That is, their persona. Do they mix well with other people? So when you're interviewing, don't focus just on the skills. Focus just on the person. They have to go together. You also need a trusted business advisor if you're not reaching your goals. Not as profitable as you should be. Another giveaway is if people being very, very nice to you and telling you exactly what you want to hear. They're playing you like a violin. They read you and tell you what they want you to hear versus what you need to hear to change the business. That's a dead giveaway. If you find that you are not able to attract people and keep them, I mentioned that earlier, focus on that. If you're not a good judge of consultants you bring in to help you, then what's going on there? A lot of times what I find is people don't know what they want. Well, guess what? You're not going to find it because you don't know what it is. I really advise that you have close friends around you who have business experience. Now, I'm laughing because the opposite thing often happens. You'll say, hey, I'm thinking about starting my own business. And you talk to your friends. Guess what they're going to say? You would be great at that business. Have they ever been in business for themselves? So are they qualified to give you advice? I think you know the answer is no. So get 2 or 3 people around you who have business advice and meet with them frequently. You may not need a trusted advisor. That may be enough. You'll have to make that decision when you begin to interview trusted advisors. Can they add an element that you need? Take your time. This is an important decision, one you should sort of consider and think about, and don't be too reactive and don't be in too much of a hurry. Unless, of course, the business is burning, then you better move it. What does a trusted business advisor do, and or what is their process? Well, part of the process is you interviewing them and them interviewing you. And if I'm doing the interview, one of the things I'm really going to be looking for is, are you committed to the process? Because if you're not committed, I can tell you it's not going to work. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of a situation. I was talking to this executive, and he was almost reclined in his chair as he was listening to me because I was in the process of debriefing him on some information I'd gotten from interviewing people around him and some psychometrics and his biography. So I was debriefing him. I'd invested a lot of time in preparing, and he was half asleep. And I looked at him and I said, I've really worked very hard to give you this information, and my impression is you're not paying attention. And he sort of looked at me and said, I'm paying attention. And I said, well, your body language is telling me you're not. And he said, well, this is the way I always listen. And I said, have any of your direct reports ever commented on the fact that you're sending a message you're not listening? He said, no, they've never commented on it. I said, well, does that tell you something about your relationship with your direct reports? That nobody's had the intestinal fortitude to tell you you're sending a message that is impacting them? Like, why should I even bother in preparing for you? Well, from that point on, the conversation was very rich. So I would be very concerned whether or not you're committed. In fact, I have sort of a quasi-contract, about 10 questions where you rank yourself. And one of the last ones is, you will take responsibility for your own change. I'm not going to change you. I can't change you. It's not my job. And if I were on the other side of the equation, I wouldn't want you forcing your changes on me. I want to discover who I am and what I need to do. I'll help you in that discovery. I'm really good. It's your journey, and you're entitled to learn for yourself. So another clue that you need a trusted, another situation as far as a trusted advisor, they should have a process. My process is assessment, challenge, support. The assessment is a combination of a biography, 6 or 7 pages, questions you will probably not have thought of in years, and you'll get reacquainted with yourself. The other part of it is online assessments. So these are psychometrics where you'll get a self-evaluation. I'll give you feedback on it and interpret it for you. And the third one is the support. So the assessment process is a diagnostic. The challenge part is a development plan with specific goals, action steps, observable behavior, old behavior, new behavior, because I will be coaching people around you to give you feedback on the change or lack thereof. Then the last piece, and it's the most important piece, is support. You can't read a book, and even mine, and change or be transformed. You have to experience it through a period of time by ongoing conversations around coaching. You don't morph, and I don't morph, and we don't change without somebody coming alongside of us. I mean, think about it. The things we hunger for the most, we can't give ourselves. It has to come from an outside source. That's what the support does. And the support should last for 3 to 6 months because it's going to take time. You do not change your way of thinking, therefore your behavior overnight. And that was a big clue. A lot of what we'll talk about is your attitude. What do you see leadership as? How do you think of it? So potentially, if you change your mindset, you'll change your results. Example, working with this individual, he's overwhelmed, he's got a new project, he's drowning with the learning curve, and he's talking to me in a way that he's, I wouldn't say whining, but he certainly wasn't positive. And I said, wait a minute. I look at you, and I don't know what your salary is, but I have a rough idea of what it is, and there are a bunch of zeros after it. And you're involved in a stretch assignment where you're learning lots of new skills. Those new skills are going to be transportable. Anywhere you go, anytime in your career, they're going with you. They don't stay with the company. So you're being paid to learn. So you have a scholarship. You're not paying. You're being paid to learn. Tell me what's wrong with that equation. That's a good example of how if you change your mindset, you can change your results. This process is enlightening. I hope you enjoy it. An interesting question I ask people is, what is your mindset, image, metaphor, whatever word you want to use, for management or leadership or just relationships with people? Let's go with relationships with people. Generally, they vary, but I'll see something like, I see a person, I size them up, I judge them, and then I go from there. I was playing tennis the other day and reached over to pick up a ball, and two women were walking by, and I overheard them. And one woman said to the other one, "You know, Alice really isn't that bad once you get to know her." So there's a certain percentage of us that will judge people without getting to know them. Not a good idea, because your mind is in a negative place. So when you see that person, you're over here. You got to get to neutral. You need to give them a break, and you need to be able to listen to them. You can't be in neutral when you've judged them. Major clue to relationships. And once you do that, it will begin to open doors, because you'll listen to them and they'll listen to you. Oh, by the way, what I'm espousing works at work, but it's even better at home. What's another mindset? Well, I'd forgotten this one until I had listened to one of my podcasts that I'd recorded a few years ago, and I'd totally forgotten this. I was working with this individual, very aggressive. I was involved because he was having lots of turnover. And turnover, I'm laughing, but it's expensive. I said, "So how do you see yourself as a leader?" And he said, "I'm a bowling ball." I'm going, "Oh, this is interesting." "Yeah, I'm a bowling ball, and my people I work with are pins. And I roll down and I scatter them. Boy, does that get their attention. And do they scramble? And it's really effective." And I said, "Really? So do you see any correlation between the way you treat your people you're working with, like pins, and turnover?" And they said, "Not really." And I said, "Well, how do you think it impacts them to be hit by a bowling ball?" He said, "I really don't care. I get my results." I said, this is painful for me to listen to, by the way, even repeat. So does that work long term, or does it give you near term benefits and long term consequences? And he said, "What do you mean by consequences?" I said, "How about turnover? How about people don't stay with you?" Well, we eventually got there. But isn't that amazing that somebody would have that kind of a mindset? So a lot of work you potentially have to do is, how do you regard people? How do you think about them? What is your mindset? What is your metaphor? And if you haven't thought about it, which perhaps you haven't, think about something like this. How can you be a difference maker? I don't care what level you are in a company. I don't care whether you have a title or not. What can you do to benefit people? How can you encourage them? And you had this happen to you. Somebody said a nice something or other to you, and you go, "Oh, man, that made my day a lot better." You've had the opposite. Somebody's made an offhand comment without thinking, and potentially, depending on who you are and how you're made up, it ruined your day. So think in terms of, how can you encourage people? Actually, what would be really kind of cool, first thing in the morning, as your feet are about ready to hit the floor, say, "I'm going to work and I'm going to encourage." You think of a name. Think of someone you don't like. Think of how you can encourage them. How can you lighten their load? Maybe you offer to get lunch for them. Whatever. Now, that brings up an interesting topic. How do you get to know people? So I mentioned that earlier. Once you get to know Alice, she's really a nice person. So how do you get to know her? Well, what you might do is say, "Alice, let's go out and have a cup of coffee." And be honest. You'll say, "I'm a little uncomfortable talking about this, but we've worked together for a long time. I don't know you. I know what you do, but I don't know you. I don't want to be invasive, and I don't want to pry. So let me ask a question of you, and then I'll answer the question myself. What do you do on a fun weekend? It's an ideal weekend for you. What do you do?" And I'll listen. Then I'll get a clue on what Alice does. Now I have a thread to expand that conversation. Then I'll reverse it, and I'll tell Alice what it is I do. We have a 10-week-old puppy. And his name is Socks because he has white socks on all 4 of his feet. So reason I have Socks here is I care a lot about this puppy, and you will get puppy type caring if we work together. It's important that I pay attention to Socks because if he doesn't get attention, he starts to yelp and he starts to bark. And I would guess maybe some of my clients from time to time want to yelp or bark. Well, go ahead. It's about a two-way street. It's about my knowing if this is working for you or not. And Socks, is this working for you? See that look? It's working for Socks, and it can work for you. I look forward to getting acquainted with you, and I'll send you pictures of Socks as he grows up. So join the bandwagon, have puppy kinds of fun. I see people not as who they are or what they're currently doing. I see them as what they can become. Linda is an example of that. Linda is an introvert. She works for this company. She's one of 5 on the, what do I want to call them, leadership team. She's the only woman, and she's an introvert. So Linda's in this situation where she's struggling because I asked her this question: what is your biggest concern? And she said, other than becoming a bag lady, my biggest concern is I won't be able to keep my job. I'm an introvert. The others are males, and they're all extroverts, and they overtalk. And the problem is every Monday we have a meeting, and each of the 5 of us get 10 minutes to bring the others up to date. I rehearse everything I'm going to say. I memorize it. Then I go into the meeting, and I start to give my presentation, and the boss asks me a question. That puts me on my back foot because I've got my script, and I've only got 10 minutes, and I have to get it in. So I start to stutter. I don't stutter. I've never stuttered in my life. He's driving me crazy. Well, I asked the obvious question. So what does he say when you tell him the impact his questions have on you? She looked at me and said, you obviously don't get it. He's my boss, and I'm a woman. He'll say something like, well, suck it up. They're legitimate questions. So I'm not going down that path. I said, Linda, can we talk about it? And she was reluctant. And I said, is this affecting your sleep and your health? She said, yes. I said, then I think we need to talk about it. But there's a caveat, there's a proviso. If we talk about it, I'm going to coach you on how to have that difficult conversation with your boss. But you have to commit to me that you'll have that conversation. Do we have a deal? She hemmed and hawed and said, this is really going to be tough. I said, well, visualize that you have the conversation. Your boss gets it, and he stops interrupting you, and now you look forward to the meetings. Just try to visualize the benefits. She said, okay. So I coached her, and it went something like this. Tell him how he's impacting you. Basically, rely on the truth. Don't make up a story. And it might go something like this. Boss, there's something I haven't told you that's really bothering me. I don't like coming to work on Mondays. I'm not productive because what happens, in the background, I've memorized what it is I want to say. You don't know that. I come in and I start to talk to the group from script. You ask a question, a legitimate question, but you ask a question, that interruption throws me for a loop. Is there any way you could keep your questions until the end of my 10 minutes and then ask the question? He laughed and he said, if it's going to make you more productive, sure, I can do that. Well, that's not the end of the story. What happened is you had this Linda that was like this, that she opened up. She now began to exert herself in a very light, introverted way and influencing other people in the organization. It made her realize she could add value and make a difference. She blossomed. How do you think that made me feel? It's like, wow. All I did was ask a few questions and just a little bit of coaching. And she is a heroine. Can you imagine the concerns she had to overcome? And I mentioned earlier, one of her concerns was being a bag lady. She's an amazing woman. You can be an amazing person. I hope I can work with you. In case someone is overwhelmed, let me share with you a lesson that the controller of my company, when I had a company a few years ago, taught me. I didn't teach him, he taught me. So I own the business. I think I'm pretty creative. I have lots of ideas. So I came in one morning to Charlie, and I'd talk to Charlie and say, and he was a controller, and he got things done. He was really process oriented, which I admired. Charlie, I've got a great idea. Come on into my office and let's talk about it. And Charlie came in and he sat down and he listened, which he always did. Then his response was different. He said, Kent, let me think about your request and get back to you. That was not Charlie's normal response. Charlie's normal response was to salute and do it. He came back into my office, I don't remember, let's say an hour later. I've looked at your request. I've sort of analyzed how many man hours it would take to do the request, and I've got that number. And I've also looked at the impact it would have on other things we're doing. So if we put your project in front, then it would slow down these other projects. So let me give you the facts. It's going to cost roughly $3,000 to do this project. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I mean, merely asking the la-da-da-da, I don't remember what I was asking. And he said, it's $3,000. I'm just telling you the cost. And he said, and of course it's going to slow down one of your favorite projects by maybe 20%. So now I know you're exaggerating. I was not happy. Charlie did not respond to that. He just said, that is the impact your request is going to have. What do you want to do? And I said, let me think about it. I did not normally think about my requests. I just wanted it because I wanted it. Well, I thought about it, and I asked myself this question. How will it save me money? How will it make me money? It wouldn't do either one of them. I wanted it because I wanted it. So it was almost like crawling across broken glass. I went back to Charlie and said, Charlie, forget what I asked. Now Charlie recognized how he could manage me. The overall impact was he was working 10 hours a day. As he began to manage me, he was down to 8 hours a day. There was turnover in the accounting department because I kept dreaming up stuff. And the last thing I wanted to hear from Charlie was, I want to add head count, because that would have really not pleased me that he wanted to spend more money. So he very adroitly trained me. How can you train your colleagues? How can you train your boss? You don't have to be overwhelmed unless, of course, you choose to be and always say yes.